Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, the Kraken wakes. Battered, bandaged and bemused, Theresa May's withdrawal agreement lurches back onto the political stage as Aberavon's Labour MP Stephen Kinnock calls on Jeremy Corbyn to whip Labour's MPs to push the agreement through. He says it's the only way to avoid what he calls a catastrophic no-deal Brexit and the only realistic way out of the political deadlock for those who want to leave with a deal. Stephen joins us now. Good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
I must say I don't know how many bullets the withdrawal agreement has in its body, but you still think there's life in it.
Well, the key point is that this is not at all the withdrawal agreement that failed to get through Parliament. This is the withdrawal agreement bill that was a result of the cross-party talks, and it's actually full of concessions to Labour's negotiating position. There's a customs union at least until the next general election. There's a bill on workers' rights with dynamic alignment with the European Union. There's environmental standards guarantees, and very importantly, there's a commitment to a binding vote on whether the deal should be put to a second referendum. So, unfortunately, Parliament never got a chance to look at this because it was dismissed in a rather knee-jerk way, I'm afraid, by our side and by others. And we unfortunately then haven't had a chance to debate or vote on it. But I've always felt that this was a good deal, particularly because it's the product of concessions to Labour.
But by what mechanism would it be brought back?
Well, you're going to ask me now whether the new Prime Minister, who is very likely to be Boris Johnson, will do it. I simply don't know, but what the piece I've got in the Observer today is saying to the new Prime Minister is that and to Jeremy Corbyn, that the only way to break this deadlock is to get something through Parliament, in a hung Parliament. That really requires both sides, Labour and the Tories, to be whipped to support it. And the only way we got the numbers for doing that is if Jeremy now, I think, makes this big, bold offer and throws down the gauntlet to the new Prime Minister.
Do you think Labour MPs would obey that whip, though?
I think there are a substantial number of Labour MPs who will go with the recommendation of our whip because they know that there's a catastrophic no-deal Brexit waiting around the corner. We now have a Prime Minister coming in who has made it clear that he will leave on the 31st of October, do or die, come hell or high water. And, for me, the steel industry, that would be the final nail in the coffin. I will not do anything that facilitates the destruction of our steel industry, and therefore, if you want to get no deal off the table, or if you want to have a second referendum, and if you want to have a deal-based Brexit, the withdrawal agreement bill is the only game in town.
There are other possibilities, aren't there? I mean, there's talk of taking over the parliamentary timetable by an emergency motion, instructing the Prime Minister to seek another extension while there was a general election. There are other things on the table as well as this, aren't there?
Well, I'm still waiting for, John Bercow to pull a rabbit out of the hat. But my understanding, particularly looking at a recent paper by the Institute for Government, is that the parliamentary mechanisms to actually legally bind the hands of the government are now gone. The Cooper-Letwin mechanism, that ship has sailed. Every other opportunity that's being explored doesn't seem to be leading anywhere. The only realistic deal on the table is the withdrawal agreement bill. It is full of concessions to Labour, and if you want to have a second referendum, this is the only parliamentary route to it. Those who are campaigning for a second referendum need to explain to us precisely how they think we're going to get that, particularly before the 31st of October.
But these arguments were had, weren't they, before the fall of Theresa May? And I don't see what's changed in terms of the attitudes of MPs.
Well, they weren't properly had because there was a knee-jerk reaction to what Theresa May had brought forward as a result of the cross-party talks. And I'm afraid the kind of purists on each side of the debate ended up torpedoing the possibility for compromise. So we have never had a chance in Parliament to properly debate and vote on taking this bill past second reading to committee stage which is where all of these amendments and opportunities come in. So it actually all got cut off before we had that chance. And of course, that set in motion the resignation of Theresa May, and we ended up putting the future of the country in the hands of 160,000 hardline Tory Brexiteers. So that surely is not a good outcome for our democracy.
But realistically, can you imagine Boris Johnson, newly elected by those 160,000 Conservative activists, promising out come what may, do or die on the 31st of October, suddenly turning around and telling them, I'm going to present Theresa May's withdrawal bill to Parliament? I mean, she's just not going to do it. It would be political suicide.
Well, I've long ago given up predicting what is going to happen. What I can say is what I think should happen, and I think this is about political leadership. It's about pragmatism, it's about realism, and it's about both the new Prime Minister and the leader of my party recognising that we are now staring down the barrel of a no-deal catastrophe, and the only option we have is actually something that's aligned with Labour Party policy, which is to say we want to have a referendum on a deal. Well, you've got to get a deal over the line in order to be able to put that to Parliament for whether that should be the basis for then putting that to a confirmatory vote of the British people. And so, when you look at it in a hard-headed way and you say, well, the withdrawal agreement bill that we see now is not anything that we've debated before. It is the product of cross-party talks. It is full of concessions to Labour's position. It's an opportunity both for the new Prime Minister and for the leader of my party to step up and say, we've got to put the country first now, and we've got to do the right thing. And actually, that gives us the options that are party policy anyway.
Stephen Kinnock, thank you. Stephen Kinnock, the Labour MP for Aberavon. Let's have